Welcome back to another episode of the Real Life Investing Podcast with Jason and Rachel Wagner. We are in celebration mode. Rach, did you stay up late last night?
Yes. I mean, I didn't make it all the way to the end. I had to be woken up for the speech, but I was close. I think I fell asleep around like 1.
I did not fall asleep. I had energy throughout the night. This was a decisive victory for Donald Trump and the Republicans. Really, we are seeing a red wave surge through the country, and it's painful for a lot of people on the left side. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. But this is one of the most glorious days that we've been waiting for. And I say that with some humbleness at the same time, because look, at the end of the day, we are a very, very divided country. We're one of the most divided countries out there. 50% more, less than 50% of the country still voted for Kamala and what they stand and what the Democrats stand for. It's just that the vast majority shifted to the right. And I think there's a lot of questions that both sides just need to dissect a little bit. Why? The biggest one is just why. Why did this happen? So let's start the show with that. Rach, why did we see what we saw?
It's incredible what we saw. I mean, Trump not only won the Electoral College, but he won the popular vote by more than 5 million votes. I mean, just
he won the popular vote. A Republican has not won the popular vote since early 2000s or something.
Yeah,
George Bush. This man who is villainized as Hitler just won the popular vote, in which the Democrats previously has always said, we need to get rid of the Electoral College and really just focus on the popular vote.
Yeah,
and they can't say that anymore because we have a man that just won everything.
Yeah, this is the greatest. I mean, you hate him all you want, but this is an inspiring comeback story and just a story of resilience and perseverance. And he didn't do it alone this time. And I think that is what rallied so many more people behind him this time. This was truly a unity team ticket. I mean, he had 4 former Democrats right up there with him: Tulsi Gabbard, RFK Jr., Elon Musk, Joe Rogan. I mean, all of those people. I mean, Joe Rogan voted for Bernie Sanders, and RFK was running against him in this election. So the ticket bringing that much unity and these people waking up, I hate to say waking up because I think that probably sounds offensive, but these people making the switch from their traditional Democratic Party over to Trump, I think just shows that maybe we're not actually as divided as it's been made out to be. There's certainly division around the emotion right now. It's very, I empathize with the left and with the people who are feeling scared and are feeling hurt and feeling confusion, because we felt that 4 years ago. I think circumstances were a little bit different, but I can understand those feelings, because if Kamala would have won, I would be feeling that way too. So I empathize with them. My hope is that as this unity ticket and this true team comes into the White House, there's a natural unveiling of what is possible. And, I think there was something that you shared that was like, this didn't happen because the Trump supporters are racist or, evil or coming from a hateful place, right? Like, that rhetoric, I think, is now dead, right? Like, over half of the country by a huge margin not only voted for Trump, but we're keeping the House and the Senate. And in very blue states, the margins of which Kamala did win are very condensed and smaller than they have ever been. Kamala had the smallest margin in New York City since 1988 for any Democrat. And Chicago and Cook County movement, I mean, Chicago did not flip red, but it was a very closed margin. The movement that we saw just from 2020 to 2024 is remarkable. And I think why that is because, historically, minority vote has gone to the Democrats. And this time around, Trump gained many, many voters in the Black community, in the Hispanic community, and I think the white suburban mom, who, very much voted for Kamala Harris, I think, as a white suburban mom, should ask themselves why, and maybe try and understand from a minority who did vote for Trump. Because I guarantee people who didn't, and people who are feeling scared and hurt. Those people are definitely out there. But there's a very big chunk and a growing chunk of people who did vote for Trump. And I think sitting and listening to them, we had two on our show, two Hispanic women who were formerly Democrats and turned to Republican, speak on our show, and listening to what they have to say, their thoughts and opinions are valid. And I think the Democratic Party has for too long been trying to speak for all minorities, and minorities have their own voice. They don't want to be spoken for. They don't want your pity. They're strong, independent voters and citizens of this country, and they had a very strong voice this time around, a huge, strong voice. And so that's remarkable. I think it's remarkable for the party. This Republican Party today is vastly different than the Republican Party even just 8 to 12 years ago. That we are diverse, we are unified. It's really bipartisan. I'm excited. I know many people aren't, but I'm hopeful that as you see this team move into place, that you can see where people were coming from. And we can get into more of the specific topics too. But
no, I think that was an expert analysis, honestly. You brought up a lot of great points, which is and we saw this anecdotally, but from the Trump team, for example, Elon Musk and Robert Kennedy Tulsi Gabbard used to be Democrats. Look, Elon had plenty of opportunity to stay on the Democrat side. He is a guy that produces electric vehicles. He is a guy that wants green environment, everything. He is the number one guy for that.
So is RFK.
And RFK is. But both of them have said over and over again, I didn't leave the Democrats left me. Mm-hmm. And we have to really dissect that answer there, because the Democrats, as I talked to some of these former Democrats, and as we spoke with the Hispanic women that were on our show, what I didn't really recognize from myself was that Hispanics and Blacks this is how we've always voted, and this is what our culture does, and you vote blue no matter who. It was kind of like that was the herd mentality.
Right.
And it wasn't until, I swear, it was just a couple weeks ago where it really became so clear to me. And it became clear because we had multiple conversations with these two women, and then we met Zoe with Flip Chicago Red, a Black woman who is gay, who is a partner in leading an organization in the city of Chicago, who is drastically upset about what has happened with this migrant crisis, and how the Black and Latino voters have recognized, wait a second. They said one thing. They said, wait a second. You've had all of these resources, all of this money, all of this capability for this long, and you just spent it on the migrants that came in, that just showed up, that have never paid a dime in taxes? And that is the story that exploded last night at the ballot box. It was the migrant crisis. It was the open borders. It was the doing of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris to not secure that border, to undo everything that Donald Trump had put in. Donald Trump had recognized this was an issue long ago. The Democrats said it was a non-issue. They reversed course. And you have just witnessed something that was undone broken specifically by the Democrats that were in power, and people are finally saying no more. And they spoke. And you have a popular vote winner, you have an electoral college winner, you have a Senate winner, and you will likely have a hold of the House. This is a ass kicking. It's a good old fashioned ass kicking. And you just have to look at it was broken and now it needs to be fixed. And we were even seeing on some of the exit polls of CNN, they had a massive, I mean, what stuck out to me most, the question was, is the economy on a good track? Or like, are we in a good place?
Is the country headed in the right direction?
Right, is the country headed in the right direction? And there were two answers. One was, do you remember the?
Disagree.
One was disagree, or
Yeah.
one was like angry.
Yeah.
And the percentage between those two was like almost 70%.
Yeah.
Almost 70% of the country felt that we were on the wrong track.
Mm-hmm.
And you to think that you can win when you have that type of response is you're not thinking clearly. And so you and I were talking about this morning. If the border was fixed, I think the Democrats could have won. If the border was fixed early,
yeah,
and the policies that Trump put in place in the beginning were never undone, I believe the Democrats would have won this election.
It would have been a lot closer. I think the economy still has a big, and the wars, the
Sure.
economy and the wars, like, and this is where we talk about, like, when did the episode on like our conservative values and stuff. It's like, it's not that these other issues aren't important. It's that there are bigger issues here. People need to be able to feel comfortable and provide for their family. Working families need to feel like they can provide. And we need to feel safe and out of wars. The majority of America does not want to be in wars. And we need to have a secure border. America does not want to be overrun by migrants. I don't want to see migrant children in the middle of medians, selling roses, right? Like that is not America. We don't want that for people coming here. We want people to come here legally and ready to assimilate into the country.
And let's talk about it a little bit, because there are some people that, depending on where you live, you may not have experienced this crisis.
Yes.
or thought it was as high of a priority as it truly was.
I think that's a lot of, so the people that I have seen this morning, there's few exceptions, but a lot of the people I've seen this morning voicing, their sentiment and just sadness over the election results, or being like, I can't understand, are people who live in red states. So, we were talking about this. It's like, if you live in Iowa versus living in Illinois, the impact of these things has been vastly different, because you have a governor who's shielded you from the migrant issue, and even the economy. The economy's been incredibly stable and strong in Iowa versus Illinois, right? People and businesses are fleeing Illinois. So like, if you're living in an area that is red, the impact of what we've seen in an area that's blue is very different. And I know that from talking with family who's in these red states, just people being shocked by some of the things I'm telling them that I see. And it's so, our vote was very much about those three big things, because we were hit harder than some of these other areas. And so I think, maybe they will come to see that. Maybe they won't, because they won't change their environment. But I think if you're one of those people, maybe ask yourself, well, was I really as impacted by some of these things as other people? And even taking it a step further, looking at the abortion issue, I see a lot about that today, women's rights being taken away. And it's so frustrating, and it's hard to not engage in conversation with people on this. And I don't, because I know in most instances it will be hyper emotional and we won't actually get anywhere. I'm not going to change anybody's mind, but I feel like there's so much misunderstanding on that topic. So let's take Iowa, for example. Roe v. Wade was overturned, right? The abortion laws in Iowa remained the same. Like, you can still have an abortion in Iowa. through the first trimester, possibly even a little bit further. I don't know for sure. And same with Illinois, right? Illinois, you can have an abortion elective abortion first and second trimester. Certainly in other very deep conservative states, abortion laws have changed, but there is not a single state currently in the United States that does not allow for an abortion in the instance of the health of the mother. And so when these videos that Kamala was putting out that were so hyper emotional about women bleeding out from miscarriage and not having access to abortion, well, when you're bleeding out from a miscarriage, the procedure isn't even called an abortion. It's not an elective abortion, it's a D&C. There's not a single state in the United States of America right now that would not allow for that procedure to be done, because it is in the instance of the health of the mother. It is no longer a viable pregnancy. So there's so many layers here, and it gets really frustrating. The same with like an ectopic pregnancy, right? Like that's not a viable pregnancy. So the procedure that you're having is not an elective abortion, it's a D&C. And there's, again, not a single state in the United States where that procedure today cannot be done. The argument that is coming from the left is, well, there could be doctors that feel that the law is so vague that they don't want to put themselves at risk of performing it. And I would challenge you to find somebody who truly feels that way and doesn't feel that they couldn't argue this is no longer a viable pregnancy because the woman is miscarrying, or this is not a viable pregnancy because it's ectopic and it's not going to survive. I don't believe that. I could be wrong. There could be some doctor out there who's going to say, I'm too scared to perform this, but to me, that's still not a limit on your access of healthcare, because there's going to be plenty of physicians around who would do that, understanding that you are going to bleed out if you don't have this care, or your ovary is going to burst if you do not have this care. So those super sensitive, emotional videos that were coming from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz were very, very upsetting, because as the law is written today and as things stand today, that's not true. It's not factual. And even further with the abortion stuff, again, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade during the Biden-Harris administration. So if the Biden-Harris wanted to do something about it, which they can't because they don't actually have the power to do so, but if they did, why wouldn't they have done it during this current term, during their current position in the White House? What makes you think that something is going to be different in Kamala's future term than it is right now, right? And again, they can't. Like, it's the only way that it could happen is if you put Kamala Harris in the White House, or a Democrat in the White House. They then stack the Supreme Court and then have another case come to the Supreme Court to then reinstate that law. That's the only way it could happen. Otherwise, again, it's not constitutional. It's not in the Constitution. Unless we're going to start amending the Constitution, which I think you're going to see a big fight on that. But I guess my point is the whole perception around this abortion thing was so frustrating, especially like as a woman and living in a state where it's incredibly legal to have an abortion here. It's just like nothing is changing. You know, arguably there are very, very conservative states. So I'm not saying that there's not, but these arguments of in the life of the mother, and a lot of times in rape and incest, like the vast majority of states are not changing those rules. So if they are, and if that's bothersome to you and super important to you, pay attention and vote at the state level. I guess you're wasting your efforts of voting at the federal level on this topic. Pay attention and vote at your state level and make changes there.
Again, expert analysis. I can't speak to any of this. I'm the guy, right? And that was wonderful. So thank you for all of that. One of my biggest takeaways from what you just said is that, look, the left pushed a lot of fear on all of this, but your counter argument is that fear is really not that valid.
No.
Right? And
no, and the one example, I can't remember the woman's name, but there was an example of a woman who she took an abortion pill, and the pill did not complete the abortion, so she was bleeding out, and she went to the emergency room for care, and they scheduled her for a completion of the abortion, but they didn't schedule it that same day. They scheduled it the next day or something. There was something weird about that. But the Harris campaign took that story to say that this woman couldn't get life-saving care in her instance, and I think they even claimed it was a miscarriage. It wasn't. She took the abortion pill, and the pill did not complete what it was supposed to do. But it wasn't for lack of access to care. Arguably, it was a mismanagement of scheduling in response to her care in that hospital. And yeah, that's a problem. They need to address that with the problem. But they scheduled the DNC. It wasn't an abortion anymore. They scheduled it. They scheduled the DNC. She would have had the appointment, but she had an infection and got sepsis, and they couldn't get it under control. So I would ask a couple of questions. How long was she bleeding? How far along was the infection when she went into the emergency room? You know, I mean, was there a delay of response of trying to get care? I don't know. There's so many unanswered questions, but they took the beginning part of the story and just made it super inflammatory. Women are bleeding out around the country because they can't get abortions. It's like, what? What? You know, that is not actually happening. It's just, it was so bothersome, and I'm disappointed in how the campaign took that and how they made that out to be our biggest issue. You know, it's from my perspective, that is not the biggest issue facing this country. And America has spoken. It was not the biggest issue facing the majority of America.
It was not the biggest issue. It was not the biggest issue. It may be in your viewpoint because of the the coverage that was pushed on it so hard that you believe that was the biggest viewpoint. But I want to get into this whole. It's so important to me. It is so important to me that we talk about the manipulation and the propaganda that comes from. It could be from both sides.
100%.
It's
both sides.
It's totally from both sides, but it's totally very true. In what we've seen in this whole thing is that the media will villainize, and look what they did with this whole Madison Square Garden Puerto Rico comedian comment, where the comedian said that Puerto Rico was garbage, and the mainstream media blew that totally out of proportion. And literally, guys, they were trying to make a mountain out of a molehill. We've heard that expression. Mm-hmm. But this is what that's what the mainstream media does, because they have always sided with the Democrats. And who are we talking about? We're talking about CNN. We're talking about MSNBC. We're talking about ABC News. We're talking about NBC News. We're talking about CNBC News. We're talking about your local NBC News, your local ABC News. Every single channel that you have on the left side that is on TV that we grew up watching is all saying the same coordinated, propaganded effort. And they're doing it simultaneously to help the Democrats win.
Yeah, I mean, I think it has been so upsetting to watch the clips that have been just on repeat of Donald Trump over the last 8 years, more like 10 years, really. And it's frustrating on both sides. Like, as a Trump supporter, it's like, I wish he would present, sometimes in a way that would avoid that. I think there are ways to say certain things where it's
sure, he kind of locks himself into it.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot harder for people to find.
And it makes their job easier because they can take
yes.
a portion of his speech and hey, we're gonna put together this coordinated effort.
Yeah. And
like that is truly what happens.
I challenge someone to find an entire clip not taken out of context that is truly showing him as a racist or a sexist or a dictator or anything, right? Because the only things that the legacy left media has been showing are these clips, and they did that most specifically. Adriana brought it up in her episode where I brought it up, she responded to it, but Trump's a racist because he called all Mexicans rapists and murderers. And that was just such a perfect example, because that is 100% not what he said. He said Mexico is not sending their finest. They are sending rapists and murderers. So he didn't even say that it was Mexicans coming in who are rapists and murderers. He said the country of Mexico was sending in these people who were criminals. And for years and years and years and years and years, this clip has been, on repeat, and headlines: Trump calls all Mexicans racist and murderers, or rapists and murderers, or whatever the hell it was. And it was just like, I guess my point is I challenge everybody to, on both sides, no matter the ring, to seek out the full context, the entire video, listen to him in long form. And that's where Joe Rogan did this country such a service. Elon Musk too, of allowing a platform where you could listen to people in long form, because you can make anybody look like anything in snippets of what they say, right? But if you listen to somebody in context and listen to their entire presentation of what they're trying to say, it's not there. It's not there.
And it helps you. Okay, here's the thing about the mainstream media is that they'll play the clip and then it's a 15-second clip. Look what Trump just said. Rachel, what's your thought on that? Tell me what to think about that.
Yes, that's
right?
my biggest frustration with all media, Fox News included. Fox, CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all of them. They have so many freaking political analysts, which essentially is what we're doing here.
We're
right?
totally doing
but,
that.
Yeah, on our own platform, right?
I'm
not claiming to be a journalist. I'm not claiming to be, somebody who's whatever, a journalist. They, as the news, should be sharing the facts. They should be sharing the news and allowing people as the viewer to interpret that however they want. I don't think that mainstream media should have political analysts. I don't need you to tell me how to think about the news. I can think about it for myself. I'm doing that right now, right? Like that's what's like, if you watch these news medias, it's all political analyst, political contributor, political blah, 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 blah. It's like, where's the reporter?
Right.
I just want to talk to the reporter. Just let me hear the reporter.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's where most people just look, we just need to go back to reporting the news. What's actually happening? And this is where you see X, that platform, really take off, where it's independent reporters. It's independent journalism. It is people out there with their phones that are capturing something in the moment that's happening and then providing that on a platform in real time. And it's bypassing, you have millions of people that are doing that, and it's completely bypassing the machine of this legacy media that can manipulate, pull the clips that they want to pull, and then put commentary and coordinated analysis to it, and then distribute that to the masses, right? We have entered into a brand new age of proving that long form content on podcasts with a Joe Rogan style. And I actually want to bring up this fucking fantastic example. I was speaking with a woman that I work with regularly. She's actually my attorney. She's a extremely smart woman. I've been working with her since 2016, and we talk on a weekly basis. Now, we've hardly ever talked on politics because I always knew that she was left-leaning. She hated Trump. And we stuck to business, right? And that's totally fine, right? We don't have to have political conversations. But I started to recognize that she started to coming around to like podcasting, and she started hearing some things, and she would kind of like slowly throw some things in my ear and be like, hey, this is kind of interesting, right? And I saw her like having an openness, and that's the big thing, is that not everybody has this openness to want to discover. A lot of people, I just want to hear what I want to hear, and I'm sticking to that, and I'm just going to completely put a wall to what's on the other side. But I started to sense that she had an openness to want to discover. And she still voted for Kamala. She voted early. But she called me and said, Jason, did you listen to the Donald Trump and Joe Rogan podcast? I said, of course I did. I said, do you? And she's like, yeah, I have never heard him at that light before. I have never ever seen him sound so intelligent. I have never, this guy has it all together. This is not who I thought he was. Well, what do you mean this is not who you thought he was? This is how I've always seen him, because I've listened to him and I've followed him. Well, I found out that she got all of her news sources from traditional legacy media. And the painted picture of Donald Trump is the villain, the Hitler, the terrible businessman, the guy who's gone into bankruptcy, the guy who's raped women, the guy who's is a felon, the guy. This is the worst person on earth, and pure evil. And she said, he was none of that. And I was like, what? What do you mean he's none of that?
Yeah.
She's like, I cannot believe that I heard his whole story without interruption. She said, did you listen to the J.D. Vance and Joe Rogan? And I said, I haven't yet, but I'm going to. She's like, oh, I highly recommend it. He's fantastic. And I'm like, are you going to vote for Donald Trump? This was before I knew like that she actually voted. And she's like, I early voted. And I wish I would have heard these podcasts before I early voted.
Right.
Because I would have voted for Trump.
Yeah.
And that exploded my brain. That completely exploded my brain.
Yeah. I mean, the Joe Rogan podcast, I just can't recommend enough, is Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, Elon Musk, and RFK Jr. Phenomenal episodes. And the RFK Jr. one, it's old now, it's from last year, but that was the first time I had heard him in long form. It's so funny. I love like acknowledging like how I've even had these perceptions of like, I would mention RFK to certain people, and people would just be like, yeah, but he's so extreme on this, he's so extreme on this, he's so this, and like basically like he's anti-war, he's anti-nuclear, he's kind of a quack, he's kind of crazy, and he's so anti-vax, and like those were all the things I knew about him. Yet I had never read anything of his, listened to anything of his, so like my perception of him was those things very early on, and it wasn't until I listened to him in long form I was like, whoa, I really like this guy. And so I've said before, like had he remained in the race, it would have been challenging for me to choose somebody, because I really, really, really liked him, whereas before I had only heard these labels that the media had put in everybody's head. And I will tell you, other people who I know had those same labels and listened to his episode changed their mind too. It's like I think we, myself included obviously, need to think about our preconceived notions of people and ideas and all these things. Like, well, where did that come from? Like we asked, where did your conservative values come from? Where did your liberal values come from? Do you know? Do you know why you're strong in your conviction? Or is it just what you were taught, what you've always thought was true?
Or is it just what your parents have done and they told you that this is the way that we've always done it, so you should do it too?
Right.
And that was the story of the Latino vote. Is that no longer is it just herd mentality. It's, no, I'm going to think for myself. No, I'm going to vote for myself because I have access to the information. And the information is free on podcasts. And that is insane.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many pieces to this election that are so vital. I just think that is the one component that I think as a learned skill for voters moving forward is to find out what the truth is. And the only way to find out what the truth is to find the actual source and have it without interruption and manipulation and analysis. And you come up with your own decision. And the form is podcasting. And then I think this is where X really comes into play, where that is a platform where people just post the news and it's independent journalism. And there's no...
It's so funny you just say that, because I literally just got an update from Elon Musk on X that says news should come from the people. He literally just said that.
He literally just said, oh.
News should come from the people just now.
Isn't that funny? Isn't that funny? And if you're not on X, you need to be. You need to be. Yeah. And at the same time, there's going to be people that have fake accounts that are kind of sharing things, and but you get good as you dissect this stuff before you share it. You'd be like, let's listen to that headline that I just scrolled through, and let's see if I can actually put some pieces together. Does this actually sound legitimate?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so is there enough support?
Is there enough support? Right. Yeah. And what's great about X, and which is it's getting a lot better, is that they have a component on there that if something is blatantly false and it's being spread, and the misinformation part, right, that the Democrats are so concerned about, there are what they call as community notes, and that gets flagged. And what community notes is that there's enough people that have counter arguments to this that is absolutely not true. And when something gets flagged with community notes, it's still out there for you to see, but there is a flag on there that says, here's how this is not true, and here's some reasons why. Right.
Yeah,
and so you can see all that, right? And so it's almost like Bitcoin, right? It's like the way Bitcoin works is on a blockchain, right? And you can't manipulate a transaction because somebody has validated that transaction, or there's a bunch of people that have actually validated that transaction, and so it can't be changed because there's validation. And the moment that something is not true, it's just like you go to post something that's false, there are going to be people that comment instantly, dude, that's not true. What are you talking about? Like,
Yep.
right? You literally can get fact checked there. And so that's essentially what this is. But here's what the Democrats wanted to do. If they would have won, there were plenty of calls from Kamala, from Hillary Clinton, from people on the left saying X needs to be shut down. And if this is the only platform that allows you to have freedom of speech, we don't have freedom of speech anymore.
Yeah.
And mass censorship was going to continue, and really, dude, we were going to be blinded for life because we would have never gotten to the bottom of it. We would have never seen the truth because it would have been censored from us.
Yeah, I've been like so baffled by the people who call Donald Trump a dictator, comparative to what we saw with Biden and what seemed to be what we were going to see with Harris. It's like, Trump, I can't, what's a mandate that he did?
That was dictatorship? I have no idea. I have no
I
idea.
mean,
he was in office for 4 years. I mean, I don't remember him ever being a dictator.
And that's where, I can't think of anything, and maybe that's not unfair. Maybe
the only dictatorship that I remember was a vaccine mandate that was put in by Joe Biden.
Yes, and that's the thing is they make this argument that Trump's such a dictator, but when I look at what happened post-COVID, 2021, 2022, with the vaccine mandate, you're going to lose your job if you don't consent to taking this vaccine that's not even fully approved yet. And then the censorship that was occurring for doctors, they took away people's medical licenses across the country for showing different data and having a different
they took away the ability to debate. Opinion. They took away the ability to debate something that was so critical for people to know.
Yes,
in
and
that
it's
vaccine.
So dangerous to think about. I don't want to go to a physician who is only telling me what the people 15 steps above him are telling him to say. I want to go to a physician who is taking what they learned in med school, thinking critically and analyzing me as a patient and making recommendations for me as a patient, not what, necessarily is coming from up above.
Right, and that's where, remember how we used to say,
all doctors must think the same. Well, wait a minute. And if you don't think the same, we're going to take your board license. We're going to silence you on this. There's going to be death threats to you. That was more dictatorship than anything I have ever seen from Trump. And to your point of them saying we've got to take down X and we've got to stop this conversation, and there were some other things that they had said specifically to Trump supporters. I'm just like, you want to talk about dictatorship? My gosh, that is coming from the left. It is not coming from the right. This notion of, that Madison Square Garden rally, you brought that up. I mean, that was so insulting. I think to everybody there were Jewish flags hanging in Madison Square Garden. Oh, saying
it was a Nazi rally?
Yeah, it was like, what? There was a hugely diverse crowd. There were seriously Jewish flags flying, Israel flags flying, and it makes no sense, and yet that is the headline and the rhetoric and the belief of so many people, and it's so confusing.
Yeah, and that's
frustrating is a better word. It's not confusing. It's frustrating.
I call it brainwashing because it doesn't seem like it is, but you're just so convicted in these things like, oh no, that's what he is, because I've heard this over and over and over and over again. The thing is, if you literally repeat the lie over and over and over again, it becomes truth, right? And it sets in. People will say the same thing. Trump continues to deny the 2020 election. He said it over and over and over and over again, and like they called it the big lie, and the left will literally say the exact same thing. It has become truth for people on the right hand side. Well, dude, here's the thing: is that there was evidence upon evidence of how was the 2020 election really influenced. It was the fact that the mainstream media knew about the Hunter Biden laptop and completely suppressed it. There were 51 FBI agents that signed off and said that this was something that was put in place by Russia, and it was a complete falsehood. That was a complete lie. And so did that manipulate voters at a crucial time when they were potentially making a decision? Absolutely. And so this is how we can say the election was not fair in 2020, because there was deception, manipulation, and proven maliceness that happened from the left to literally suppress information. And this is what we're talking about in terms of censorship, and how censorship can brainwash you into not knowing what the real truth is, and we can't get away from that. And in my opinion, that type of conversation has a higher priority in terms of our overall health of a country than some of the main issues that were put forward on the left. But here's the great thing about this election, is that the right side had so many reasons to vote for the right side. The left side had in my opinion, two reasons to vote for the left. It was Trump derangement syndrome. You hate Trump, so I'm not voting for Trump because I hate the guy. Valid, fine, totally. I heard that so many times. It's totally fine. If that's the way you felt, great. You know what? It's really hard to change that. You have to have a willingness to look past it. But if you don't have a willingness to it, whatever. And we call it Trump derangement syndrome, and it's a serious condition. Second was the abortion, in which you put forth a very good counter argument of, okay, I think that is still a very important issue for many, many people. And I will never say that it's not. I think it's extremely important. But those are the two issues that they put forward. The right put forward how many issues? The border, the economy,
Foreign policy.
foreign policy, peace through strength,
Men and women's sports.
men and women's sports. In my opinion,
Health.
remembering the health
American
and
health.
vaccine
Health.
mandates. I mean, they didn't really put forward, they didn't really talk about the vaccine stuff at all. Trump didn't talk about it at all. But
No, it was just the chronic disease epidemic.
Yep,
in
and that's where
America. Trump did a good job of that, actually, I will say, because RFK is definitely more outspoken and that stuff. And Trump is very much like, I'm going to bring RFK on board. There is 100% a chronic disease epidemic in this country. It is skyrocketing. It is irrefutable. You look at the numbers across the board, it is frightening. And that was where he left it. He's like, when we get in office, we'll put RFK in place, and he's going to figure it out. I'm not going to say it's this. I'm not going to say it's that. I'm not going to say it's this. But it's undeniable that we have a chronic disease epidemic in this country. Our kids are way less healthy today than they were 20, 40, 50 years ago.
Right, and there's statistics to actually prove that.
100%.
But
yeah.
but
And
the narrative
all the
is
new
still
illness and diseases that are coming about is mind-boggling. You know, there are diseases that kids are being diagnosed with today that did not exist before in prior generations. And so something we are doing is changing the health of our children and of our people in this country. And if you compare us to other countries that did a great job of this as well, as far as pharmaceutical consumption and chronic health, we should be at the top. You know, this is America, first world country. I mean, we should be at the top, and we are not. We are dwindling down. We are declining, and our life expectancy is also going down. So I think he did a phenomenal job of bringing light to that issue without alienating people with predetermined consensus of what is the cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a great job of that.
Yeah. And so there were a number of reasons why someone would want to vote for the Republicans. And that was clearly the case, is that there wasn't just one or two reasons for people to vote for Republicans here. There were many. And there were not enough reasons for people to vote for the Democrats. And one of the biggest things that I think was a big misstep was that Kamala Harris could not admit a fault of her last 3.5 years. Was there something that you guys did or Joe Biden did that you would do differently? And she said, no, I don't think so. There's nothing
Yeah,
that
she had a
comes to
lot
mind.
of misses, and I think that came from the parties wanting to protect Joe Biden. The party refuses to admit that they were wrong or that Joe Biden mental capacity has been declining. They refuse to acknowledge that or admit it, even though the whole country knows, which is why they replaced him. Literally, everybody in this country knows that Joe Biden was not capable of running another 4 years or being in office for another 4 years. He's not capable of being in office right now. I bet you a majority of America feels that way. I bet you a majority of Democrats feel that way. But the party itself refuses to acknowledge that and instead talks about how he's had the greatest presidency in modern history. And it's like, huh? And so
They should not have done that. They
was,
should literally have said, look, Joe Biden has been on the decline. We noticed it early. We had a huge kumbaya, and we all got together and said, look, this is time. It's time to pass the torch.
Yeah.
And you
But
can't
would
be ashamed
pressed,
of that.
They would be pressed to pinpoint when they started acknowledging it. That's why the
Right.
media's been trying to
Right.
get
They
Kamala
could.
to-
They backed
So my
themselves
point
in
is,
the corner.
she was in a tough place of the party has not acknowledged this, and so as his current VP, what was she going to criticize?
Right.
But
And
it
this
was a
is-
huge
but this
miss
is-
for her from a campaign standpoint.
But this
right?
is the problem, is that when you tell so many lies on the left hand side, when you don't
Right.
admit what's actually happening and you paint a glossy picture of something else happening, you can't win. You
miss your opportunity.
you totally miss it. The
Yeah.
only way forward is through transparency and being truthful and stop telling lies. Now again, I can literally envision someone listening to this and being like, Jason, Donald Trump tells so many lies and lies. I literally I've heard that too, right? We have to get to a point where the truth is the norm. People are transparent. It was the lies and the deception that the left put in play, and it got the result that they got. And that's it. It got the result that they got. They broke so much. They sold us on fear. This is what's going to happen if Donald Trump gets in. Well, hey, the American people was smarter than that, because we remember just 4 years ago, Donald Trump did not get us into new wars. Donald Trump was not a dictator. Donald Trump did not do these things that you keep saying that he's going to do. And so we had a memory on that. And so your lies didn't work, and they saw right through it.
Well, and so that's what's so unique about this election is, in essence, they were both really seeking second terms. Granted, Kamala was a vice president, but they both had 4 years in the White House. And so voters could literally look and say, well, here was Trump's 4 years, here was Biden-Harris 4 years, and actually look as a comparison. And that hasn't, we have, as Americans, we have not had that opportunity. And what did you say, over 100 and some
No,
years?
it's never happened where we've had two competing presidents that have actually been in office before. It has
Well,
never happened.
Okay, so, but what has happened is the president had a gap term where
Right.
they were in office, then got voted out, then got voted back in.
Right. And that was Grover Cleveland, 132
Right.
years
So
ago or
like
something.
this literally has not, it's never been a thing for us, and that made this super unique is you literally had two live examples of Trump in office, Kamala in office.
Right.
So she really needed to separate herself from the current administration.
Yeah, and she couldn't.
She couldn't, yeah.
And she couldn't. I think this was a really good wrap up of everything. Anything else you want to add that you can think of?
I imagine we will probably keep talking about this as things continue to develop. I don't think this was a win for Republicans, for us. And I truly believe a win for the majority of America. Not everyone feels that way, but I do think that it was, and I do think over time more and more people will see that. But I think there are still many challenges ahead. And so I imagine we will probably keep talking about this as those challenges present themselves. I think as we started this podcast, Kamala hadn't conceded yet. So, there's a concession that
But he's
needs to
projected.
occur.
He has been announced like everywhere that he is.
Agreed.
But yeah,
Agreed.
there's
But
still
she
there's still a
hasn't-
holdout that she hasn't like
she
spoken
hasn't
yet.
conceded. The states still need to certify. He still needs to get sworn in. His life is at risk. He's had 2 assassination attempts. So, there's a lot that could happen. And it's not like he goes in office tomorrow. So now when you look at foreign policy in the world, we've got essentially 2 more months of this administration and everybody knowing it's going to be vastly different come January 20th. And so does that make these next 2 months potentially more volatile or more at risk? Maybe, So I think this was a good wrap up, but I think we're far from done.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's going to be happening.
I want to add another piece. I've had a ton of fun talking about this political season over the since really the assassination attempt. I mean, I started a little bit prior to that, but really the assassination, the first one, exploded it for me because again, I look at Donald Trump as he is the greatest leader of all time, and I say this because I respect the work ethic. I respect the way he has not given up. You talk about any hero story where you've got a guy who is going against everything. The David and Goliath. I mean, I look at him as this is David. Goliath is the machine of the U.S. government and the Democrats and all of the things that went against Donald. And he never gave up, man. We're talking about this is his 3rd election. He never gave up, and that is undeniably admirable. And we were just seeing his last week of rallies. Dude, he had 3 rallies in there were the last 4 days. He had 3 rallies in a day.
Yes.
And the guy's work ethic at how old is he? 72? The guy's work ethic at 72 years old?
He's older than that, I thought.
Is he older? 76?
Let's look.
Let's check real quick. Important number.
It is. He's 78, babe.
Fuck. This guy at 78 years old is doing this type of activity that I, at 35, would have a hard time doing. That is unfucking believable, and it deserves... Did he earn this? Did he earn this? He fucking earned it.
Yeah.
He fucking earned it.
He hustled and pushed through the hardest. I mean, his own party was against him in 2016. He didn't have the support of the Republicans in 2016. He didn't have the support of the media, the Republicans.
It's the greatest comeback story of all time.
He's so inspiring.
It is the greatest comeback story of all time, and it's something that you have to acknowledge. You have to respect it. If you hate him, that's fine. But look at the work ethic and how inspirational that is. Because you know what? If I never give up, I can never fail.
Yeah, he just showed that. I mean,
and what is entrepreneurship? Not giving up. And what is providing for your family? Not giving up. And just keep going. And finding different ways to go about it. When you know what your goal is and when you're convicted on achieving your goal, no matter what happens, if you never give up, you will never fail. And Donald Trump showed that. And it's hard to say, he's an evil man. That was unbelievable. And it was so fun to watch. It was so fun to comment on it publicly. And I found some great new friendships and built deeper bonds with people. I've lost some people. I actually, in the last day, I lost 20 some followers on Instagram. And, does it hurt me a little bit? Sure, of course. Nobody ever wants to be put in that position. And
nobody wants to be disliked.
Nobody likes to be disliked. But at the end of the day, those people can come back if they want to. I will welcome you back anytime. And I hope that I can have a chance to to be back in your world too. But in my opinion, I think that what we are doing is correct. And I think no matter what the result is, you're going to get backlash. But if you just keep pushing forward, you can't fail. And so it's not always going to be sunshines and rainbows, and Donald Trump clearly showed that to us. Anybody that wants to speak about politics and have an opinion, you put yourself in the arena, you're going to get backlash. You're going to get people that want to dislike you, that want to take you down. That's just part of the game. And can you get comfortable being in that position and still moving forward is a learned skill. And so anyways, I'm excited to continue the conversation.
Me too. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I guess we'll cut it.
All right.
All right. Thanks for listening. If you found any value in the show, please share it. And yeah, I hope you listen to this one. And I hope you do share it. I think there's a lot of good commentary. I think there's a lot of takeaways from this election that we can learn from. And please let us know if you got any feedback. We would really greatly appreciate it, and we would love to hear from you. All right. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next show.